German Shepherd was locked in a broken washing machine. What baby did next left. Everyone in tears. The story you're about to listen to will leave you speechless. What happened in this quiet neighborhood changed everything forever. If this touches your heart, make sure to like, share, and let us know where you're watching from. Rain pelted the windows like tiny fists demanding entry. The sky had darkened to a menacing gray, but it wasn't the approaching storm that made 4-year-old Ethan press his small ear against the cold kitchen floor. Something else had caught his attention, something his parents couldn't hear. "Mommy," Ethan whispered, his blue eyes wide with worry. "Someone's crying." Olivia Matthews glanced down at her son from where she stood chopping vegetables for dinner, knife paused midair. "What was that, sweetie?" "Down there," Ethan pointed at the floor with one chubby finger. "Someone's sad and scared." A crash of thunder shook the house, making the lights flicker. Olivia smiled patiently, setting down her knife. "That's just the storm, honey. Nothing to be afraid of." But Ethan shook his head firmly, his bottom lip trembling. "No, Mommy. Someone's calling for help." Olivia wiped her hands on a dish towel, crouching down to her son's level. At 4 years old, Ethan had always been sensitive, noticing things others missed, feeling emotions deeply. His preschool teacher had called him unusually empathetic during their last parent-teacher conference. "There's nobody down there, sweetie, just the basement, with Daddy's tools and our old washing machine." She stroked his soft brown hair, trying to soothe him. The front door banged open, and Daniel Matthews hurried in, his jacket soaked through. "Storm's getting worse," he announced, shaking water from his hair like a dog. "They're saying it might flood the lower streets." "Danny!" Ethan cried, running to his father and tugging on his wet sleeve. "Daddy, someone's stuck downstairs. They're scared." Daniel exchanged a look with Olivia over their son's head. "Buddy, there's nobody down there, just boxes and—" "Please," Ethan's voice cracked with desperation. "Please listen, they need help right now." Daniel sighed, setting down his bag. "Ethan, we've talked about this. Sometimes your imagination—" But Ethan's eyes welled with tears. "It's not imagination. Something bad is happening." His little body trembled with conviction. Olivia moved to the basement door, if only to reassure him. "See, honey, nothing down there, but—" She stopped mid-sentence, because there it was, faint but unmistakable, a whimper, then a scratching sound. Her blood turned to ice. "Daniel," she whispered, "I think I heard something." Daniel's expression shifted from tired patience to alert concern. He moved quickly to the door, placing a restraining hand on Ethan's shoulder when the boy tried to follow. "Stay with Mommy." As Daniel descended the creaking wooden stairs, the wind howled against the house. Olivia pulled Ethan close, her heart pounding. Seconds stretched into an eternity. Then Daniel's voice floated up, tight with tension. "Liv, call animal control, now." "What is it?" she called back, already reaching for her phone with unsteady fingers. Daniel's response was drowned out by a sudden, desperate yelp from below, a sound so pained that Ethan wriggled free from his mother's grasp and bolted down the stairs before she could stop him. "Ethan, no!" Olivia cried, rushing after him. The basement air felt damp and cold, heavy with the smell of mildew and something else, something metallic and wrong. The overhead bulb cast harsh shadows across the concrete floor, illuminating Daniel's stunned face as he stood before the ancient washing machine they'd meant to dispose of months ago. From inside the machine came another whimper, weaker this time. "Oh my God," Olivia breathed, grabbing Ethan before he could get closer. "Is that—" "A dog," Daniel confirmed, his voice strained. "A German Shepherd, and the doors jammed shut somehow." Through the cloudy plastic window of the front loading machine, Olivia could make out a dark shape, barely moving. Water pooled at the bottom of the drum. Not enough to drown in, but enough to soak the animal. How long had it been trapped there? "But how did it—" she began. "It didn't get in there by itself," Daniel said grimly, examining the door. "Someone put it in, and then they broke the latch mechanism so it couldn't get out." Thunder crashed overhead, making them all jump. The storm was directly above them now, but the real horror was right here in their basement. "I told you," Ethan whispered, his voice small but steady. "I told you someone needed help." Olivia fumbled with her phone, dialing animal control with shaking fingers. As it rang, she watched Daniel struggle with the washing machine door, trying to force it open without success. "It's sealed tight," he muttered, frustration edging his voice. "Who would do something like this?" The dispatcher's voice finally answered, and Olivia hurriedly explained the situation. Her heart sank as she listened to the response. "The storm has blocked Kingston Road completely," she told Daniel after hanging up. "A tree came down. They can't get here for at least 3 hours." Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "That dog doesn't have 3 hours." Inside the machine, the German Shepherd made another sound, so weak it was barely audible. Its dark eyes, visible through the window, looked directly at them. Not wild with panic as Olivia might have expected, but with an eerie, knowing intelligence. Ethan broke free from his mother's grip and approached the machine, pressing his small hand against the glass. "Don't worry," he said softly. "We'll get you out." The dog's tail moved, just the faintest twitch, but unmistakable, responding to the child's voice. "I need my tools," Daniel said suddenly, moving to a workbench in the corner. "Maybe I can dismantle the door mechanism." As Daniel rummaged through his toolbox, Olivia noticed something that made her blood run cold. Next to the washing machine, half hidden behind a stack of storage bins, was a large metal dog crate, and beside it, a heavy chain with a padlock. "Daniel," she said quietly, "look." He followed her gaze, his expression darkening. "That's not ours." "Someone's been down here," she whispered, "while we were out." Their eyes met over Ethan's head, the same horrifying thought occurring to both of them. Someone had broken into their home to hide something, or someone they wanted to dispose of. Ethan seemed oblivious to their discovery, all his attention focused on the trapped animal. "His name is Max," he announced suddenly. Olivia blinked. "What, honey?" "The dog. His name is Max." Ethan said it with absolute certainty, as if the animal had told him directly. Daniel returned with a screwdriver and pliers. "Stand back," he told Ethan, who reluctantly backed away a few steps, but kept his eyes fixed on the washing machine. As Daniel worked on the door mechanism, Olivia's mind raced. Who would do this? How had they gotten into the house? Were they coming back? Should they call the police? What if... A low moan from inside the machine interrupted her thoughts. The German Shepherd was growing weaker. "It's not working," Daniel muttered, sweat beading on his forehead despite the basement's chill. "The latch is completely mangled." The sound of the rain intensified overhead, a constant drumming that seemed to match Olivia's racing heart. Then, barely audible beneath the storm's fury, came another sound, sharp and distinctive. Someone was trying the handle of their back door. Olivia froze, catching Daniel's eye. He'd heard it too. He straightened up slowly, putting a finger to his lips. The noise came again, a gentle rattle, as if someone was testing to see if the door was locked. "Take Ethan upstairs," Daniel whispered. "Lock yourselves in the bathroom and call 911. But Ethan was shaking his head vigorously. "No, we can't leave Max." "Ethan, please," Olivia began. "The bad people are back," Ethan hissed, his face suddenly older than his years. "They want to hurt Max more." The rattling at the back door stopped. For a moment, there was only silence beneath the storm's constant roar. Then came a new sound, the crunch of footsteps moving around the side of the house. Daniel grabbed a hammer from his toolbox, his knuckles white around the handle. "Go, now!" Olivia scooped Ethan into her arms, but he writhed and kicked, reaching toward the washing machine. "No, we have to save him first." Inside the machine, the dog lifted its head with visible effort, looking directly at the child. It made a sound, not quite a bark, not quite a whine, something in between, something urgent. And then Ethan went completely still in Olivia's arms. His body relaxed, but his eyes remained locked with the dog's through the cloudy plastic door. "He says they want him back because he knows too much," Ethan whispered. "He got away from the fighting place." A chill ran down Olivia's spine. Dog fighting. The words hung in the air, unspoken but understood. Daniel's expression hardened as the pieces fell into place. "Take Ethan," he repeated to Olivia. "I'll deal with this." But before anyone could move, they heard the distinct sound of breaking glass from upstairs. Someone had gotten in. Daniel immediately killed the basement light, plunging them into darkness. "Behind the workbench," he breathed. "Now." Clutching Ethan to her chest, Olivia crept toward the corner Daniel had indicated. Her foot kicked something metal, Daniel's toolbox, sending a wrench skidding across the concrete floor with a sound that seemed deafening in the darkness. They all froze. Overhead, floorboards creaked. Someone was walking through their kitchen. The footsteps paused at the sound from the basement, then changed direction, coming toward the basement door. In Olivia's arms, Ethan suddenly went rigid, Without warning, he slipped from her grasp and darted across the dark basement. "Ethan!" she gasped, reaching for him blindly. But he was already at the washing machine, his small silhouette barely visible in the dim light filtering through the basement windows. What was he doing? The basement door at the top of the stairs began to open. A thin wedge of light cut through the darkness. Daniel moved silently, positioning himself at the bottom of the stairs, hammer raised. Olivia's heart threatened to burst from her chest as she fumbled for her phone, trying to dial 911 without looking at the screen. A beam of light swept the basement, a flashlight. It caught Daniel first, illuminating his defensive stance. "What the hell?" a gruff voice exclaimed. The flashlight beam wobbled, then steadied on Daniel's face. "Who are you?" Daniel didn't lower the hammer. "I live here. Who are you?" The stranger didn't answer. Instead, the flashlight beam swept across the basement, finding the washing machine, and Ethan crouched beside it. "Get away from there, kid," the voice commanded sharply. But Ethan didn't move. Instead, he did something that made Olivia's heart stop. He turned the handle on the washing machine door. It opened. The door that Daniel had struggled with for the past 20 minutes swung open at the touch of a 4-year-old's hand, as if it had never been jammed at all. The German Shepherd tumbled out in a wet heap, its dark fur matted and filthy. For one terrible moment, it didn't move. Then its sides heaved with a deep breath, and it shakily pushed itself to its feet. The flashlight beam jerked back to Daniel. "That's private property," the intruder snapped. "You got no right to interfere." "Private property?" Daniel echoed incredulously. "You broke into my house." The beam of light wavered. "Your house?" Confusion colored the gruff voice. "This is supposed to be empty. Foreclosed." "We bought it 3 months ago," Daniel said, his grip on the hammer unwavering. "Now, who are you, and what are you doing in my home?" There was a moment of silence, broken only by the storm and the sound of the German Shepherd's labored breathing as it pressed itself against Ethan's small body. Then, without warning, the flashlight clicked off. Footsteps thundered up the stairs. The intruder was running. Daniel sprinted after him, taking the stairs 2 at a time. Olivia finally managed to connect with 911, her voice shaking as she reported the break-in. In the darkness of the basement, Ethan knelt beside the German Shepherd, his arms wrapped around the dog's wet neck. "It's okay, Max," he murmured. "You're safe now. I heard you calling." The dog made a sound, not quite a whimper, not quite a growl, and licked the child's face once, deliberately. Its eyes, reflecting what little light remained in the basement, looked almost human in their intensity. When Olivia managed to turn on her phone's flashlight and direct it toward them, she gasped. The dog's condition was worse than she'd imagined. Its ribs protruded sharply beneath its wet fur. Old scars crisscrossed its muzzle and sides, telling a story of cruelty that made her stomach turn. But what truly shocked her was how the massive animal curled protectively around her son, positioning its body between Ethan and the stairs, as if guarding him from whatever might come down them. Above them, she could hear Daniel moving around, presumably searching for the intruder. The wail of distant sirens suggested help was finally on the way. "How did you open the door, sweetie?" Olivia asked, approaching cautiously. The German Shepherd watched her, but made no aggressive move. Ethan shrugged, his small hands gently stroking the dog's wet fur. "Max told me how." "Max told you?" Ethan nodded solemnly. "He said the round thing wasn't really broken. It was just stuck, and that the bad man put something in it to make it stay closed." Olivia knelt beside them, examining the washing machine door. The locking mechanism seemed perfectly intact now, no sign of the damage Daniel had described earlier. "Ethan," she said slowly, "how did you know there was a dog down here? We couldn't hear anything from upstairs until we opened the door." Her son looked up at her, his eyes reflecting the light of her phone in a way that sent another chill down her spine. "I heard him in here," Ethan said simply, tapping his forehead. "He was calling and calling. He said only I could hear him because I'm special." The German Shepherd's eyes never left Ethan's face, its gaze filled with an intelligence that seemed impossible for an animal. It leaned heavily against the boy, as if drawing strength from his touch. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside Olivia's mind, a different kind of storm was brewing. What had really happened here tonight? How had her 4-year-old known about a dog trapped in their basement? How had he opened a door that his father couldn't budge? And most disturbing of all, who had put the dog there, and why were they so determined to get it back? The sirens grew louder, police cruisers pulling up outside, Soon the house would be filled with officers taking statements, asking questions Olivia wasn't sure she had answers to. But one thing was certain, as she watched her son whisper into the ear of a dog that should by all rights be terrified of humans, nothing in their lives would ever be the same again. Blue and red lights flashed through the rain-streaked windows, casting eerie shadows across the living room. Two police officers stood dripping on the Matthews welcome mat, while Daniel explained what had happened. Olivia sat on the couch, a blanket wrapped around Ethan's shoulders as he stroked the German Shepherd's head in his lap. "And you say the intruder just ran?" Officer Rivera asked, scribbling notes in a small pad. Daniel nodded. "By the time I got upstairs, he'd already bolted through the kitchen door. I caught a glimpse of him jumping the back fence, but with the storm..." He gestured helplessly at the windows, where rain continued to lash against the glass. Officer Chen, the younger of the two cops, crouched down to examine the German Shepherd. The dog growled low in its throat, pressing closer to Ethan. "Easy, boy," Chen murmured, keeping his distance. "That's one protective animal you've got there." "He's not ours," Olivia explained. "We just found him, trapped in our washing machine." Both officers exchanged glances. "In your washing machine?" Rivera repeated, her pencil pausing on the notepad. "I know how it sounds," Daniel said, running a hand through his hair, "but someone put him in there, broke the latch mechanism so he couldn't get out." Chen's face darkened. "We've been getting reports of dogfighting rings operating in the county. Animals stolen, found injured." He gestured toward the German Shepherd. "This guy might be connected." Ethan's arms tightened protectively around the dog's neck. "His name is Max," he insisted, "and he got away from bad people." Officer Rivera smiled kindly at the boy. "How do you know his name is Max, sweetheart?" "He told me," Ethan said simply, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. The officers exchanged another look, this one tinged with gentle amusement. Kids and their imagination. "I'm going to call animal control," Officer Chen said, straightening up. "They'll need to take him to a shelter, get him checked out by a vet." "No!" Ethan's scream was so sudden and sharp that everyone in the room jumped. The German Shepherd's head snapped up, ears forward, instantly alert. "You can't take Max away! The bad people will find him there!" "Ethan," Olivia began gently. "Max needs medical care, honey. Look how thin he is." But Ethan was shaking his head frantically, tears streaming down his face. "They'll kill him if they find him. He knows too much about the fighting place." His small body trembled with conviction, his knuckles white where they gripped the dog's fur. Officer Rivera knelt down to Ethan's level. "What fighting place, Ethan? Did you see something?" "No," Daniel interjected, moving closer to his son. "He couldn't have. Ethan's never been exposed to anything like that." But Rivera kept her eyes on the boy. "Ethan, what fighting place?" The child looked up, his face streaked with tears, but his eyes strangely clear. "The one in the old barn with the red door, where they make the dogs fight until they're all bloody, where they have the big cage with the chains." He spoke with an unnerving certainty, as if reciting something he'd witnessed firsthand. The officers exchanged a startled glance. "There's an abandoned property on Mill Creek Road," Chen said quietly to Rivera. "Old farm, red barn." "We've had complaints about noise there," Rivera nodded, "but we never had enough for a warrant." Daniel stared at his son in disbelief. "Ethan, how could you possibly know about that place?" The boy merely buried his face in the German Shepherd's damp fur. "Max showed me." A heavy silence fell over the room, broken only by the storm outside and the dog's labored breathing. Officer Chen cleared his throat. "Listen, I know this is irregular, but given the circumstances, maybe the dog could stay here temporarily, just until we investigate this further." He glanced at his partner. "If the kid's right about a fighting ring, this animal could be evidence." Rivera nodded slowly. "I'll clear it with the sergeant, but you'll need to have a vet check him out, and we'll need a statement from them about his injuries." Relief flooded Ethan's face. He threw his arms around the German Shepherd's neck, whispering something into its ear that made the animal's tail thump weakly against the couch. After the officers left with promises to patrol the neighborhood throughout the night, Olivia turned to her husband. "What just happened?" she whispered, mindful of Ethan who was still murmuring to the dog. Daniel shook his head, bewilderment etched across his features. "I have no idea. How could he know about a place like that? We've never even been down Mill Creek Road." "And the washing machine door," Olivia continued, her voice barely audible. "You fought with it for 20 minutes. Ethan just opened it. They both looked at their son, who was now carefully examining the wounds on the German Shepherd's body, his small fingers gentle as they parted the matted fur. The dog lay still, allowing the examination with a trust that seemed impossible for an animal that had clearly been brutalized by humans. "We need to get him to a vet," Daniel said finally. "I'll call Dr. Patel. She might make a house call, given the circumstances." As Daniel moved to the kitchen to make the call, Olivia approached her son cautiously. "Ethan, sweetie, how did you know the dog was in our basement?" Ethan looked up at her, his blue eyes serious. "I told you, Mommy. I heard him calling." "But how, sweetheart? In your head? Like thinking?" The boy nodded. "He was so scared and cold, and he knew the bad men would come back for him." A chill ran down Olivia's spine. "And how did you open the washing machine door when Daddy couldn't?" Ethan frowned, as if the question confused him. "Max told me the secret. The door wasn't really broken. It was just stuck because of the special lock they put on it." He pointed to the dog's neck, where a thin leather collar was visible beneath the wet fur. "It's the same as his collar. You have to press the metal part in the right spot." Olivia leaned closer, examining the collar. There, partially hidden in a fold of leather, she saw a small metal disc with an odd symbol etched into it, a triangle inside a circle, with what looked like a curved line running through it. "What is this, Ethan?" "Their mark," he said simply, "so everyone knows which dogs belong to them." The hair on the back of Olivia's neck stood up. "And who are they, sweetheart?" But Ethan only shook his head, suddenly looking afraid. "Max says I shouldn't say their names out loud. They might hear." In the kitchen, Daniel was speaking urgently into the phone. "Yes, Dr. Patel, I understand it's late. It's an emergency. No, not our pet. A German Shepherd we found. Yes, I think he's been abused. Yes, we've called the police already." Olivia stroked her son's hair, trying to soothe away the fear she saw in his eyes. "It's okay, sweetheart. You don't have to say anything you don't want to." Ethan nodded gratefully, then turned his attention back to the German Shepherd. "Max needs water, Mommy, and food, but not too much at once, or his tummy will hurt." Olivia went to the kitchen, filling a bowl with water and grabbing some leftover chicken from the refrigerator. When she returned, she found Ethan examining something on the dog's paw. "Look," he said, pointing to a small patch of fur that seemed darker than the rest. "They put something on him." Olivia set down the bowls and knelt beside them. Sure enough, there was something on the dog's front paw. Not blood, as she'd first feared, but what looked like ink? "Is that a tattoo?" she asked incredulously. Ethan nodded. "All the fighting dogs get one. It's their number." He peered at it closely. 873. Daniel returned from the kitchen, his face grim. "Dr. Patel can't come tonight because of the storm, but she'll be here first thing in the morning." He noticed them examining the dog's paw. "What's that?" "A tattoo," Olivia said. "Ethan says it's his number from the fighting ring." Daniel knelt down, gently taking the paw in his hand. The German Shepherd tensed but allowed the contact, dark eyes watching Daniel's every move. 873, Daniel read, frowning. "How would they keep track? There must be records somewhere." "Max says there's a big book," Ethan offered, "with all the dogs' names and how many fights they won and how much money they made." Daniel and Olivia exchanged another worried glance over their son's head. "Ethan," Daniel began carefully, "how do you know all this? I need you to be honest with us." The boy looked up, his expression open and sincere. "I told you. Max is telling me." "You mean the dog is talking to you? With words?" Ethan thought about this for a moment. "Not words like talking, more like pictures and feelings. But I understand what he means." He stroked the German Shepherd's head, and the animal leaned into his touch, eyes half closing in what looked like relief. "He says I'm the only one who can hear him, because I'm special." Before Daniel could respond, the power went out, plunging the house into darkness. The storm had finally taken down a transformer. "Stay here," Daniel said, fumbling for his phone to use as a flashlight. "I'll get the emergency lanterns from the garage." As he moved toward the door, the German Shepherd suddenly lifted its head, a low growl rumbling in its chest. Its gaze fixed on the kitchen window, ears pricked forward. "What is it, boy?" Daniel paused, following the dog's gaze. For a moment, there was nothing, just the sound of rain hammering against the glass. Then, briefly illuminated by a flash of lightning, a face appeared at the window. a man's face, gaunt and hard, staring directly into the house. By the time Daniel rushed to the window, the face was gone, but there was no mistaking what he'd seen. "Call 911 again," he told Olivia, his voice tight. "Someone's out there." The German Shepherd was on its feet now, swaying with weakness but positioning itself between Ethan and the kitchen window, hackles raised. "It's them," Ethan whispered, his face pale in the dim light from their phones. "They came back for Max." Daniel grabbed a knife from the kitchen counter. "Olivia, take Ethan upstairs. Lock yourselves in our bedroom." "No," Ethan protested. "We can't leave Max." "The dog comes with you," Daniel said firmly. "Go, now." As Olivia gathered Ethan in her arms, the German Shepherd suddenly lurched forward, limping quickly to the front door. It stood there, growling at something they couldn't see. A new sound cut through the storm, the soft scrape of metal against metal. Someone was trying to pick the lock. Daniel joined the dog at the door, knife held ready. "Olivia," he hissed, "go." But before Olivia could move, something crashed through the living room window. Glass shattered across the floor as a brick thudded onto the carpet. The German Shepherd spun around, moving with surprising speed despite its injuries. It planted itself in front of Ethan and Olivia, teeth bared in a snarl that transformed the weakened animal into something fierce and dangerous. Another window broke, this one in the kitchen. The intruders were trying to enter from multiple points. "The basement," Daniel decided quickly. "We can lock ourselves in. The door's solid oak." Clutching Ethan to her chest, Olivia hurried toward the basement door, the German Shepherd limping alongside them. Daniel followed, constantly looking back to check if anyone had gotten in yet. They had just reached the basement door when the front door burst open. A figure stood silhouetted against the storm, tall and bulky, face hidden in shadow. "Give me the dog," a voice commanded, deep, rough, with an accent Olivia couldn't place. "And nobody gets hurt." The German Shepherd's growl intensified, its body vibrating with the sound despite its weakened state. "The police are on their way," Daniel warned, positioning himself between the intruder and his family. "You need to leave. Now." The man took a step forward, and light from a passing car briefly illuminated his face, weathered, scarred, with cold eyes that held no emotion. "The dog," he repeated. "It belongs to me." "Dogs aren't property to be abused," Daniel shot back, "and you're trespassing." The man's laugh was like gravel. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." His hand moved to his jacket pocket, pulling out something that glinted in the darkness. A knife, much larger than Daniel's kitchen blade. The German Shepherd suddenly lunged forward, placing itself between Daniel and the intruder. Despite its injuries, despite everything it had endured, the dog was standing its ground, defending the family that had saved it. The intruder's eyes narrowed. "Still got some fight in you? 873? Good. You'll need it for the championship match." "His name is Max," Ethan cried from Olivia's arms. "And he's not going back to your horrible place." The man's head snapped toward the sound of Ethan's voice, his expression changing from cold determination to something like shock. "The kid," he murmured, taking a step closer. "He's the one, isn't he? The one who can hear them." Olivia clutched Ethan tighter, a primal fear coursing through her veins. "Stay away from my son." But the intruder was looking at Ethan with new interest, the dog temporarily forgotten. "How long has he been able to do it? Talk to them?" "I don't know what you're talking about," Daniel said, though the tremor in his voice suggested otherwise. The man's mouth curved into a smile that never reached his eyes. "Oh, I think you do. The boy has the gift, just like my daughter did." His gaze hardened, before the dogs tore her apart. In the distance, sirens wailed, the police returning. The intruder's head jerked toward the sound, his expression calculating. "This isn't over," he said, backing toward the door. "The dog is the least of what I'll take from you." With that chilling promise, he was gone, melting into the storm like a nightmare at dawn. Daniel slammed the front door shut, throwing the deadbolt with shaking hands. "Are you both okay?" Olivia nodded, unable to speak past the lump of fear in her throat. Ethan wiggled out of her arms, dropping to his knees beside the German Shepherd. "You were so brave, Max," he whispered, burying his face in the dog's fur. "So brave." The dog licked the boy's cheek once, then collapsed onto its side, its strength finally giving out. Its sides heaved with labored breaths, and a small whimper escaped its throat. "He's hurt worse than we thought," Ethan said, panic edging his voice. He was pretending to be stronger so he could protect us. Daniel quickly examined the animal. I don't see any new injuries. He's just exhausted himself. But Ethan shook his head frantically. No, it's inside. His ribs hurt, and his tummy. They kicked him before they put him in the washing machine. Olivia knelt beside her son. How do you know that, Ethan? I told you, the boy said impatiently. Max is showing me pictures of what they did. Daniel and Olivia exchanged alarmed glances over their son's head. What was happening here went beyond a child's vivid imagination or even extraordinary empathy. Something impossible was unfolding in their home, something neither of them had the tools to understand. The sirens grew louder as police cars pulled up outside once more, but even as relief washed over her, Olivia couldn't shake the intruder's final threat from her mind. The dog was the least of what he'd take. She pulled Ethan closer, her maternal instincts screaming danger, because she'd seen the look in that man's eyes when he realized what Ethan could do. Not just anger or frustration, but a hungry, calculating interest that chilled her to the bone. Whatever connection existed between her son and this abused German shepherd, it had just made Ethan a target. And somehow, Olivia knew, the storm raging outside was nothing compared to what was coming for them next. Morning light filtered through the curtains, revealing the aftermath of the night's chaos. Shards of glass still glittered on the floor, despite Daniel's efforts to clean up. The living room furniture had been pushed against the broken windows as a temporary barrier. In the corner, Officer Rivera spoke quietly into her radio while her partner examined the brick that had crashed through their window. On the couch, wrapped in a blanket, Ethan slept with one arm draped protectively over the German shepherd. The dog's eyes, however, were open and alert, tracking every movement in the room with wary intelligence. Olivia sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee that had long gone cold. She hadn't slept at all. How could she, after what had happened, after what that man had said about her son? Mrs. Matthews? Dr. Patel's gentle voice broke through her thoughts. The veterinarian had arrived at dawn, her small emergency kit in hand. I've finished examining the dog. Daniel joined them at the table, his face haggard from the sleepless night. How bad is it? Dr. Patel's expression was grim. I've been a vet for 15 years, and this is one of the worst cases of animal abuse I've seen. She opened her notebook, revealing pages of notes. Multiple fractures that have healed improperly, evidence of repeated trauma to the face and legs, scarring consistent with dogfighting, malnutrition, and... She hesitated. And what? Olivia prompted. There are signs of surgical alteration. Dr. Patel's voice dropped lower. Someone has performed crude procedures on this animal. His vocal cords have been partially severed, a technique sometimes used to keep fighting dogs quiet during transport, and there's evidence of experimental procedures I can't even identify. Daniel's fist clenched on the table. My God. The dog's injuries, Officer Rivera interjected, joining their conversation. Would they be consistent with being forced into a washing machine? Dr. Patel nodded. The recent bruising patterns would match that scenario, but there's something else. She pulled out her phone, showing them a close-up photo of the tattoo on the dog's paw. This isn't just an identification number. It's a registration mark. International. What does that mean? Olivia asked. It means, Rivera said grimly, that this isn't some local dog-fighting operation. This is organized crime. These animals are worth thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands, to the right buyers. Daniel ran a hand over his face. But why go to such lengths to recover one dog? Breaking into our house multiple times, risking arrest? Because Max knows things, came Ethan's small voice from the doorway. He stood there in his rumpled pajamas, eyes too serious for a 4-year-old. He saw their faces. He knows where the fighting place is, and he knows about the special dogs. All the adults turned to look at him. Special dogs? Rivera asked carefully. Ethan nodded solemnly. The ones like Max, the ones who can talk in your head. An uncomfortable silence fell over the kitchen. Dr. Patel exchanged a glance with Officer Rivera, the kind of look adults share when a child says something wildly imaginative. But Olivia had seen too much in the past 12 hours to dismiss her son's words. Ethan, what do you mean by special dogs? Ethan padded across the kitchen floor and climbed into a chair. Max says they're trying to make dogs that can talk to people, but not with barking, with thoughts. He tapped his forehead. In here. Ethan, Daniel began gently. Dogs can't. 873 was in the experimental program, Ethan continued, his voice taking on an oddly formal quality, as if he were reciting information. They use drugs and electric things on their brains. Most dogs die, but Max didn't. He got better at it instead. Dr. Patel's professional composure slipped for a moment. That's impossible. Is it? Olivia heard herself ask. How else could Ethan have known about the dog in our basement, or about the red barn, or the tattoo? Children have vivid imaginations, Dr. Patel offered weakly. Imaginations don't open washing machine doors that grown men can't budge, Daniel countered. Officer Rivera was studying Ethan with new interest. You said this dog, Max, shows you pictures in your head. What kind of pictures, Ethan? The boy's face clouded. Bad ones. Men with masks, dogs fighting until they bleed, a room with metal tables and bright lights. He looked down at his hands. And a girl who could hear the dogs too, before they heard her. Rivera's pen paused on her notepad. A girl? The man who came last night, Olivia said quietly. He mentioned his daughter, said she had the same gift as Ethan. Before the dogs tore her apart, Daniel added, his voice hollow. Officer Chen, who had been examining the broken window, joined them. We need to get this family to a safe location, he said to Rivera. If what they're saying is even partially true... A sudden bark from the living room cut him off. The German Shepherd was on its feet, hackles raised, staring at the front window. Everyone froze. Is someone out there? Rivera asked, hand moving to her holster. Ethan shook his head. No, Max is showing me something else, something he remembered. The boy's eyes grew distant, as if seeing something far away. There's a place under the red barn, a room with no windows. That's where they keep the special dogs and do the experiments. He walked to the kitchen counter, picked up a crayon from his coloring book, and began drawing on a napkin. His small hand moved with purpose, sketching what looked like a floor plan. Here's the barn, he explained, drawing a large rectangle. But underneath, there's stairs that go down to the secret place. His crayon created a series of smaller rooms beneath the barn. This room has the metal tables, this one has the cages, and this one... His hand trembled slightly. This is where the man keeps the book with all the names and numbers. Officer Rivera took the napkin, studying it with increasing disbelief. Ethan, how could you possibly know this? I told you, he said, frustration edging his voice. Max is showing me. As if in response, the German Shepherd limped into the kitchen, pressing against Ethan's leg. Despite its injuries, the dog stood tall, its dark eyes moving from one adult to another, as if gauging their reactions. Dr. Patel knelt slowly, examining the animal with new eyes. In my professional opinion, this dog has clearly been subjected to extreme abuse and possibly experimental procedures. She chose her words carefully. As for whether those procedures could have produced the effects Ethan describes, science has barely scratched the surface of understanding animal cognition. Officer Rivera folded the napkin and tucked it into her pocket. We've been trying to build a case against suspected dogfighting operations in the county for months. This could be the break we need. She turned to her partner. Call the sergeant. I want a warrant for that property on Mill Creek Road. What about us? Daniel asked. That man threatened our family. He specifically threatened Ethan. We'll arrange for protective custody, Rivera assured him. Pack some essentials. We'll move you to a safe location until we can investigate this fully. As the adults began making arrangements, Ethan knelt beside the German Shepherd, whispering into its ear. The dog's tail gave a feeble wag, and it licked the boy's cheek once, gently. What are you telling him? Olivia asked, approaching cautiously. Ethan looked up, his eyes shimmering with tears. That we won't let the bad people hurt any more dogs. That Max is going to help catch them. Olivia stroked her son's hair, a mixture of pride and fear twisting in her chest. Is that what Max wants to do? Ethan nodded solemnly. He says it's why he escaped, so he could find someone who could hear him, someone who could help stop them. He wrapped his arms around the dog's neck. He was looking for me, Mommy. The conviction in her son's voice sent a chill down Olivia's spine. This wasn't just a child's fantasy or an extraordinary coincidence. Something profound was happening, something that defied rational explanation. As they packed a few belongings under Officer Chen's watchful eye, Olivia found herself in Ethan's room, folding his favorite pajamas into a small backpack. The German Shepherd had followed them upstairs, unwilling to let Ethan out of its sight. "Does Max tell you anything else?" she asked her son, trying to keep her voice casual. "About the man who came last night?" Ethan, selecting which stuffed animals to take, nodded without looking up. "His name is Mr. Kozlov. He's the boss of the fighting place. The other men are scared of him." He hugged his teddy bear to his chest. "Max says he's the one who hurt the girl, his own daughter, because she tried to help the dogs escape." The stuffed bear slipped from Olivia's suddenly numb fingers. "His own daughter? But he said—" "He lied," Ethan said simply. "Max says he lies about everything." Downstairs, the front door opened, and Officer Rivera's voice called up to them. "Mrs. Matthews, the safe house is ready. We need to leave now." Olivia gathered Ethan into her arms, pressing a kiss to his forehead. "We're going to be okay, sweetheart. I promise." But as they descended the stairs, the German Shepherd suddenly stopped, a low growl rumbling in its chest, its eyes fixed on something outside the window, something none of them could see. "What is it, Max?" Ethan asked. The dog's growl deepened. "He says they're watching," Ethan whispered. "They're already here." Officer Rivera drew her weapon, signaling Chen to check the perimeter. "Stay inside," she ordered, her voice tense. "Away from the windows." Daniel pulled Olivia and Ethan toward the center of the living room, keeping them low. The German Shepherd positioned itself in front of them, its injured body somehow transformed by protective instinct into a formidable barrier. Minutes stretched like hours as they waited, the only sound their shallow breathing and the tick of the hall clock. Then Officer Chen returned, his face grim. "Car down the street," he reported quietly to Rivera. "2 men inside. They drove off when I approached, but they'll be back." Rivera nodded tightly. "We move now, through the back. Patrol car is waiting 2 houses down." As they prepared to leave, Ethan tugged at his mother's sleeve. "Max says we need to take his collar," he whispered. "The metal part on it is important." Olivia hesitated, then carefully unfastened the worn leather band from around the dog's neck. The small metal disc with its strange symbol felt unnaturally warm against her palm. She slipped it into her pocket, just as Officer Rivera opened the back door, checking that the yard was clear. "Now," Rivera hissed. "Move quickly." With Daniel carrying Ethan and the German Shepherd limping determinedly beside them, they hurried across the wet grass, ducking behind a neighbor's hedge. The patrol car sat idling at the curb, engine running. They had almost reached it when the sound of screeching tires cut through the morning quiet. A black SUV rounded the corner, accelerating toward them. "Run!" Rivera shouted, raising her weapon. Daniel sprinted the last few yards, yanking open the patrol car's back door and practically throwing Ethan inside. Olivia followed, reaching back for the German Shepherd. But the dog had stopped, turning to face the approaching vehicle. Its stance was wide, head low, every muscle tense despite its injuries. "Max!" Ethan screamed from inside the car. "Come on!" The SUV's windows lowered, revealing the barrel of a gun. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. The German Shepherd launched itself forward, just as Officer Rivera fired a warning shot. The SUV swerved, tires squealing on the wet pavement. Rivera dove for cover as a shot rang out from the vehicle. "Max!" Ethan's desperate cry echoed across the yard, but the German Shepherd was already in motion, a blur of dark fur as it somehow found the strength to leap, crashing into the SUV's open window. Inside the vehicle, men shouted in panic. The car veered wildly, sideswiping a parked truck before accelerating away, the German Shepherd still half inside the window. "No!" Ethan struggled against Daniel's restraining arms, trying to get out of the patrol car. "We have to help him. They'll kill him." Officer Chen was already in their patrol car, radioing for backup. "All units, black SUV heading north on Elm Street, suspects armed, officer fired upon, request immediate assistance." As Rivera ran back to join them, Olivia caught a last glimpse of the SUV disappearing around a corner, the German Shepherd no longer visible. Had it fallen, been pulled inside, or managed to jump free? "We have to go after them," Ethan sobbed, his face contorted with grief and fear. "Please, Max needs me." "We will, honey," Olivia promised, her own voice breaking. "The police will find them." But Ethan shook his head violently. "No, no, no, you don't understand." His small body convulsed with sobs. "Max didn't attack them to stop them. He did it to find the way. He's showing me where they're going." Daniel and Olivia exchanged startled glances. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" Olivia asked, pulling her son close. Ethan's tear-streaked face lifted to hers, his eyes distant yet focused, as if seeing something far beyond the confines of the patrol car. "I can still see what Max sees," he whispered. "He's inside the car with the bad men. They're hitting him, but he won't stop fighting. His small hands clenched into fists. He's doing it for all the other dogs. So I can see the way to the Red Barn." Officer Rivera, who had joined them in the patrol car, was staring at Ethan with undisguised shock. "You're saying you can see through the dog's eyes, right now?" Ethan nodded, wiping tears from his cheeks. "They're on a road with lots of trees. There's a broken mailbox shaped like a fish, and now they're turning onto a dirt road." His breathing quickened. "Max says I have to remember everything, so you can find the bad place and save all the dogs." Rivera hesitated only a moment before pulling out her notepad. "Tell me everything you see, Ethan. Every detail." As they drove toward the safe house, Ethan described landmark after landmark: a lightning-struck tree, an old tractor in a field, a bridge over a creek with graffiti on its side. His voice grew stronger with each description, as if the connection between him and the German Shepherd was intensifying rather than fading with distance. "They're stopping," he said suddenly, his body going rigid. "Big metal gate with chains. One of the men is getting out to open it." "Mill Creek Road runs into a private access road about 5 miles north," Officer Chen said from the driver's seat. "Property's registered to a shell company. We've had our eye on it, but never enough cause for a warrant." "You've got cause now," Daniel said grimly. Ethan's eyes widened. "They're at the barn. The red one, just like I saw in Max's memories." His voice dropped to a whisper. "They're dragging him inside. He's still fighting, but he's so tired." Tears streamed down his face. "They're going to hurt him like they hurt all the others." Olivia held her son close, her own tears falling into his hair. What had started as a strange encounter with an abused animal had become something far more complex and terrifying. And at the center of it all was her little boy, somehow psychically connected to a dog that had sacrificed itself to expose a criminal operation. "We'll stop them," she promised fiercely. "Max showed us the way for a reason. We won't let his bravery be for nothing." Rivera was already on her radio, relaying the detailed directions Ethan had provided. "We're requesting SWAT backup and animal control units," she told them. "If what Ethan is seeing is accurate, we could be looking at the largest dogfighting bust in state history." "It won't be fast enough," Ethan whimpered. "They're going to put Max in the bad room with the metal tables, because he's different, because he can talk to me." Daniel leaned forward. "Officer Rivera, how far is this safe house?" "About 20 minutes from here. Why?" "Because I think we need to change direction." Daniel's jaw set in a determined line. "My son has led you to what could be a major criminal operation, but right now, there's a dog in there that saved our family, twice. We owe him." Rivera shook her head. "Mr. Matthews, I understand your feelings, but we're talking about armed suspects. We need to get your family to safety and let Tactical handle the raid." "By then it will be too late," Ethan cried. "Max is showing me the room where they hurt the special dogs. They're going to put him on the table. The man with the white coat is there." His voice rose in panic. "Please, we have to help him now." Olivia felt the weight of the metal disc in her pocket, the strange symbol from Max's collar. On impulse, she pulled it out, examining it more closely. The triangle inside the circle, with its curved line, it wasn't a random design, it was a stylized letter K. "Kozlov," she murmured. "The man Ethan said was in charge." Rivera's eyes narrowed. "Let me see that." Olivia handed over the disc. Rivera studied it, her expression hardening. "Viktor Kozlov," she said quietly. "We've been building a case against him for years. Suspected ties to international smuggling, illegal gambling, animal fighting rings." She looked up at Ethan with new respect. "Your son just handed us the missing link." Behind them, sirens wailed as backup units responded to Rivera's call. She made a sudden decision, speaking rapidly into her radio before turning to Officer Chen. "Change of plans. Take us to the County Tactical Operations Center. It's closer, and the family will be safe there while we coordinate the raid." She gave Ethan a gentle smile. "And your son can help us plan the best way to rescue his friend." As they changed course, Olivia held Ethan close, feeling his small body tremble with each new vision he received from the German Shepherd. A strange, impossible connection had formed between her child and this abused animal, a connection that might save not just one dog, but dozens of others trapped in a nightmare of cruelty. But at what cost? The man who had broken into their home, this Kozlov, had made it clear that Ethan's ability made him a target, and if his own daughter had met a violent end for trying to help the dogs. Olivia pushed the thought away, focusing instead on her son's determined face as he continued to relay what he was seeing through Max's eyes. Whatever happened next, they were committed now. For better or worse, their ordinary life had been shattered the moment Ethan heard a dog calling for help from their basement. And somehow, she knew, nothing would ever be the same again. The Tactical Operations Center hummed with activity. Officers in bulletproof vests studied maps spread across tables, while radio communications crackled in the background. In the corner, a team of animal control officers prepared specialized equipment for handling potentially dangerous or injured dogs. Ethan sat at a central table, a large county map before him. His small finger traced along roads and landmarks, his voice steady, despite the tears that occasionally slipped down his cheeks. "They took him down these stairs," he said, pointing to a spot he had marked with a red X. 27 steps, then a long hallway with metal doors, like a prison. Sergeant Dawson, the tactical team leader, nodded as he made notes. "And you're sure about the number of men inside?" 8, Ethan replied without hesitation. 3 in the barn area, 2 in the room with the cages, 2 in the room with the tables, and Mr. Kozlov. He looked up, his blue eyes haunted beyond his years. "Max counted them all. He wants you to know exactly what you're walking into." Olivia sat beside her son, one arm wrapped protectively around his shoulders. Over the past hour, she had watched Ethan transform from a frightened child into something else entirely, a conduit for information that was guiding an entire police operation. His detailed descriptions of the facility's layout, security measures, and personnel had stunned the experienced officers. "It's remarkable," Dr. Patel whispered to Olivia, having remained with them to provide any necessary insights about the dogs they hoped to rescue. "The level of detail, the consistency, it goes beyond imagination or coincidence." Across the room, Daniel spoke quietly with Officer Rivera, his face tense with worry. "How much longer before the raid begins?" "SWAT is in position now," Rivera replied, checking her watch. "They're just waiting for final authorization. 5 minutes, maybe 10. Daniel glanced at Ethan. "And what about Max? Is he—" "Still alive," Rivera assured him. "According to Ethan, they're keeping him sedated but conscious. They seem very interested in his connection with your son." A chill ran down Daniel's spine. "You don't think they'd try to come after Ethan again, do you? Even after this raid?" Rivera's expression turned grim. "We'll be placing your family in witness protection until we're certain all threats have been neutralized. These aren't just animal abusers, Mr. Matthews. If what Ethan has revealed is accurate, we're dealing with an organization that's been conducting illegal experiments trying to enhance cognitive abilities in dogs. The implications are disturbing." Ethan suddenly stiffened in his chair, his eyes going wide. "They're moving Max," he said urgently. "They know something's wrong. They're packing up the special equipment." Sergeant Dawson immediately grabbed his radio. "All units, be advised. Suspects appear to be preparing to vacate the premises. Execute now. Repeat, execute now." The room erupted into controlled chaos as commands were relayed, and tactical teams confirmed their readiness to breach. Olivia pulled Ethan closer, her heart pounding with fear and hope in equal measure. "Can you still see through Max's eyes?" she asked him softly. Ethan nodded, his gaze distant. "They gave him a shot to make him sleepy, but he's fighting it. He wants to stay awake so he can help." His small face crumpled. "He's so brave, Mommy." "Yes, he is," Olivia agreed, brushing a tear from her son's cheek. "Just like you." On the main communication system, they could hear the SWAT teams approach, terse commands, the crunch of boots on gravel, the metallic sounds of weapons being readied. "Breach in 3, 2, 1. The sound of splintering wood came through the speakers, followed by shouts and confusion. Dogs barked frantically in the background. "Police, hands in the air, don't move." Gunshots cracked through the audio feed, making everyone in the operations center flinch. Olivia instinctively covered Ethan's ears, but he shook his head, pulling her hands away. "I need to hear," he insisted. "For Max." The radio chatter intensified, positions called out, suspects identified, rooms cleared one by one. Animal control units moved in behind the tactical team, their voices joining the cacophony as they began assessing the dogs they found. multiple canines located in northeast section, various states of injury, and malnutrition. Evidence of surgical equipment in the southeast room, bio-waste containers, drug paraphernalia, and then a transmission that made Ethan bolt upright in his chair. German Shepherd located in the laboratory section, appears to be sedated but alive, severe injuries noted. "Max!" Ethan cried, relief flooding his face. "They found him!" But his smile faded as quickly as it had appeared. His eyes closed, his expression contorting with concentration. "What is it?" Olivia asked, alarmed by the sudden change. "Ethan? Kozlov isn't there," he whispered. "Max doesn't see him anywhere. He got away through a tunnel under the big metal table." His eyes flew open, panic written across his features. "There's another exit. You have to tell them." Sergeant Dawson was already on the radio, relaying the warning. "All units, be advised. Possible hidden exit in the laboratory area. Primary target may have escaped. Secure the perimeter. Repeat, secure the perimeter." The minutes that followed were tense with uncertainty. Reports filtered in of suspects captured, dogs secured, evidence collected, but no sign of Viktor Kozlov. A hidden tunnel had indeed been discovered, leading to a concealed exit nearly a quarter-mile from the main compound. "Tracking dogs are on the way," Rivera informed them. "If he's on foot, we'll find him." Ethan shook his head slowly. "He had a car waiting. I saw it through Max's memories. A black car with special wheels for driving in mud." His voice dropped to a whisper. "And he took something important from the room with the metal tables, papers, and a little silver box." Dr. Patel, who had been listening intently, frowned. "Research data, perhaps? If they were conducting some kind of cognitive enhancement experiments—" "We'll find him," Rivera promised, though Olivia detected a note of uncertainty in her voice. Men like Kozlov, wealthy, connected, ruthless, had ways of disappearing. A new voice came through the communications system, requesting veterinary assistance for the German Shepherd immediately, condition deteriorating. Ethan gasped, his hands flying to his temples. "Max!" he cried. "No, no, no! He's slipping away!" Dr. Patel was already gathering her medical bag. "I need to get out there," she told Rivera urgently. "That dog needs immediate care." "I'll take you," Rivera decided, grabbing her keys. "A patrol car will get us there faster than waiting for transport." "We're coming too," Daniel said firmly, his arm around Ethan's trembling shoulders. "That dog saved our family. We're not going to let him die alone." For a moment, Rivera looked like she might refuse. Protocol would dictate keeping civilians, especially children, away from an active crime scene, but something in Ethan's desperate expression seemed to change her mind. "Stay with me at all times," she ordered, "and you'll need to wear protective gear." 10 minutes later, their patrol car screeched to a halt at the perimeter of what had once been an ordinary-looking farm. The red barn stood in the center of the property, surrounded now by police vehicles, their lights flashing against the morning sky. Officers led handcuffed men to transport vans, while animal control workers carried cages toward their specialized vehicles. Ethan barely noticed any of it, his attention focused solely on the barn ahead. "Hurry," he pleaded, tugging at Dr. Patel's sleeve. "Max is getting more tired. He can't hold on much longer." They were escorted through the barn, past evidence technicians photographing fighting rings and training equipment, and down the stairs Ethan had described with such precision. 27 steps, exactly as he'd said. The underground facility was brightly lit and shockingly modern, a stark contrast to the weathered barn above. Stainless steel doors lined a long corridor, each marked with numbers and strange symbols. The air smelled of antiseptic and fear. "This way," Ethan said with certainty, leading them to a door marked with a red cross. Inside, SWAT officers stood guard while a paramedic worked over a large, dark shape on the floor. "Max!" The German Shepherd lay on his side, an IV line already inserted in his foreleg. His breathing was shallow, his once fierce eyes clouded with pain and medication. "Max!" Ethan broke free from his parents' grasp, running to kneel beside the injured animal. "I'm here. I came just like I promised." To everyone's amazement, the dog's tail gave a feeble thump against the concrete floor, his eyes, barely open, fixed on the child's face. Dr. Patel immediately joined the paramedic, her hands moving quickly to assess the dog's condition. "What have they given him?" she demanded. The paramedic handed her a small vial he had found nearby. Some kind of sedative, strong stuff. And there's evidence of recent surgical intervention. He pointed to a freshly stitched incision along the dog's skull. It looks like they were in the middle of a procedure when they got interrupted. Ethan's hand hovered over the stitches, not quite touching. They were trying to see why he can talk to me, he said quietly. They wanted to know his secret. Dr. Patel's face set in determined lines as she prepared medications from her bag. His blood pressure is dangerously low, and he's showing signs of respiratory depression from whatever they gave him. She filled a syringe with clear liquid. This should counteract the sedative, but we need to get him to a proper veterinary facility immediately. As she worked, Ethan kept his hand on Max's neck, whispering words only the dog could hear. Incredibly, despite his dire condition, the German Shepherd seemed to focus on the boy's voice, his eyes never leaving Ethan's face. "I can still feel him," Ethan told his parents, his voice thick with tears. "In my head, but he's getting quieter, like he's walking away down a long hallway." Dr. Patel administered the injection, then prepared a second one. This will help support his heart function until we can get him stabilized. She worked with the quick precision of someone used to fighting against time, attaching a portable monitor to track the dog's vital signs. "Will he make it?" Daniel asked quietly. The vet didn't look up from her work. "I don't know. He's been through severe trauma, both recent and long-term. The fact that he's survived this long is already remarkable." Olivia knelt beside her son, putting an arm around his shaking shoulders. "Ethan, can you still feel Max in your mind?" The boy nodded, his face streaked with tears. "He's saying goodbye," he whispered. "He says he did what he came to do. He found me. He showed me the bad place so all the dogs could be saved." Dr. Patel glanced up sharply. "His pulse is dropping. We need to move him now." Two animal control officers hurried in with a specialized stretcher. With gentle efficiency, they transferred the German Shepherd onto it, careful not to disturb the IV lines. Max made no sound, his body limp and unresisting. As they lifted the stretcher, Ethan suddenly cried out, his hands flying to his head. "No, don't go!" The monitors attached to Max began to wail in alarm. His heart rate plummeted, his breathing becoming erratic. "We're losing him," Dr. Patel said tersely, already reaching for emergency medications. "No!" Ethan broke free from his mother's embrace, throwing himself across Max's body on the stretcher. "You can't go! You can't leave me!" Sobs racked his small frame as he pressed his forehead against the dog's. "Please, Max, please stay." Something extraordinary happened then, something none of the adults in the room could later fully explain. The German Shepherd's eyes opened fully, clearer than they had been before. His gaze locked with Ethan's in what seemed like perfect understanding. And then, with what appeared to be immense effort, Max lifted his head just enough to lick Ethan's tear-stained cheek once. The gesture was so gentle, so deliberate, that everyone in the room fell silent. Even the monitor's alarm seemed to pause. And indeed, when Dr. Patel checked the readings, she found that Max's heart rate had stabilized, if only slightly. "Impossible," she murmured, checking the readings again. His vitals were crashing just seconds ago. Ethan raised his head, a strange calm settling over his features. "He decided to stay," he said simply, "for me." Dr. Patel exchanged bewildered glances with the paramedic, but there was no time to question the inexplicable. "We need to get him to the clinic now. Every minute counts." As they rushed Max out to the waiting animal control vehicle, Ethan refused to be separated from him. "I have to stay with Max. Kiss," he insisted when Olivia tried to pull him back. "He needs me to hold on." Something in her son's voice, a certainty beyond his years, made Olivia relent. "We'll follow right behind them," she promised. The next few hours passed in a blur of waiting rooms and whispered updates. Max was rushed into emergency surgery at the county's largest veterinary hospital, where a team of specialists worked to address the damage done by years of abuse and the recent invasive procedures. Ethan sat motionless in the waiting room, his eyes closed, his small face set in lines of intense concentration. When Olivia asked what he was doing, he replied simply, "Helping Max remember why he wants to live." Periodically, nurses would emerge with updates, always delivered with surprise at the German Shepherd's unexpected resilience. "His will to live is extraordinary," one vet tech commented. "Most animals with these injuries and this level of trauma wouldn't have made it this far." "It's not just his will," Ethan murmured. "It's mine too. I'm lending him some." By late afternoon, Dr. Patel emerged from the surgical suite, her scrub stained with blood, but a cautious smile on her tired face. "He's stabilized," she announced. "We've repaired the most critical injuries and reversed the effects of the drugs they administered. He's not out of danger yet, but—" She shook her head in wonderment. "I've never seen anything like it. By all medical logic, this dog should not be alive." "Can I see him?" Ethan asked immediately. Dr. Patel hesitated, glancing at Olivia and Daniel for permission. "He's in recovery, and normally we wouldn't allow visitors so soon. But given the unusual circumstances," she smiled at Ethan. 5 minutes. Just you." As Ethan followed Dr. Patel toward the recovery area, Officer Rivera approached Olivia and Daniel, a tablet in her hands. "You should see this," she said quietly, turning the screen toward them. On it was a document, a research paper with Kozlov's name at the top. "We found this in the hidden office beneath the barn. It appears to be part of his research." Daniel scanned the text, his expression growing increasingly disturbed. "Enhanced canine-human telepathic bonds through selective breeding and neural stimulation," he read aloud. "What the hell?" "It seems Kozlov wasn't just running a dogfighting operation," Rivera explained. "That was just the profitable front for his real interest. Attempting to create dogs with enhanced cognitive abilities, specifically the ability to form psychic connections with certain human subjects." She scrolled to a new page, revealing photographs of brain scans and neural pathways. "According to this, he believes some children have a natural predisposition for these connections." Olivia felt sick. "Children like Ethan." Rivera nodded grimly. "And like Kozlov's daughter, apparently. There are references here to Subject Zero, a juvenile female who demonstrated exceptional receptivity to canine neural patterns." She hesitated. "The notes indicate the subject was lost during an incident involving experimental animals." "The girl he mentioned," Daniel said quietly, "the one he claimed was killed by dogs." "But Ethan said Kozlov was the one who hurt her," Olivia recalled, her blood running cold, "because she tried to help the dogs escape." Rivera's expression hardened. "We're building a case against him not just for animal cruelty and illegal experimentation, but potentially for child endangerment and homicide. If he used his own daughter in these experiments and she died as a result—" She was interrupted by Dr. Patel returning to the waiting room, a strange expression on her face. "Mrs. Matthews, Mr. Matthews," she said hesitantly, "I think you should come see this." They followed her down a quiet hallway to the recovery area, where dogs in various stages of healing rested in comfortable enclosures. In the largest of these, on a bed of soft blankets, lay Max. His body was wrapped in bandages, monitors beeping steadily beside him. And there, curled up against his side, was Ethan, fast asleep, one arm draped protectively over the German Shepherd's neck. "I told him 5 minutes," Dr. Patel said softly. "But when I came to get him, I found them like this. And look at the monitors." The vital signs displayed on the screen beside Max's bed were stronger than they had been before, heart rate stable, oxygen levels improved. "It's as if being near your son is literally helping him heal," Dr. Patel murmured. "I can't explain it medically, but I don't think we should separate them just yet." Olivia and Daniel stood in silence, watching their son sleep peacefully, beside an animal that, against all odds, had fought its way back from the brink of death. An animal that had somehow formed a connection with Ethan that defied rational explanation. "What happens now?" Daniel asked quietly. "With Max, I mean." Dr. Patel sighed. "Legally, he's evidence in an ongoing criminal investigation. Once he's recovered enough, he would normally be placed in a specialized rehabilitation facility for fighting dogs." She glanced at Ethan's sleeping form. "But given the exceptional circumstances—" "He belongs with Ethan," Olivia said firmly. "Anyone can see that." Rivera, who had joined them at the recovery room window, nodded slowly. "I think we can make a case for that arrangement, especially considering your family will be in protective custody until Kozlov is apprehended." She studied the unlikely pair, the small boy and the battered German Shepherd, drawing strength and comfort from each other. "Besides, I'm not sure anyone could separate them at this point if they tried." As if aware of being watched, Max's eyes opened slowly. Despite the heavy pain medications, his gaze was clear and intelligent as it moved from face to face before settling on Olivia. In that moment, she could almost believe what Ethan had claimed, that this wasn't just an animal, but a being capable of complex thoughts and connections. A being that had chosen her son, specifically, to communicate with. Max's tail gave a single, deliberate thump against the blankets. Then he sighed deeply and closed his eyes again, his body relaxing into sleep. Beside him, Ethan smiled in his dreams, a smile of such peace and certainty that it brought tears to Olivia's eyes. Whatever strange bond had formed between her son and this extraordinary dog, it had changed both of them forever. And perhaps, she realized, it had changed her too, for she now found herself believing in something she couldn't see or measure, a connection that transcended ordinary understanding. They found each other for a reason, she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. And I think this is just the beginning. Outside the hospital, as evening fell, a light rain began to fall, washing away the last traces of the previous night's violent storm. In quiet neighborhoods, families went about their ordinary lives, unaware of the extraordinary events that had unfolded in their midst. And somewhere in the gathering darkness, Viktor Kozlov fled with his secrets and his research, a man whose obsession with power and control had led him down a path of cruelty and loss, a man who had unlocked a door between species that was never meant to be opened. But in a small recovery room, bathed in the soft glow of medical monitors, a different kind of connection flourished, one built on compassion rather than control, on love rather than fear. A small boy and a brave dog, healing each other with every shared breath, every shared thought. Their story was far from over. In fact, it had only just begun. 3 weeks later, the Matthews family settled into their temporary home, a comfortable lakeside cabin provided by the Witness Protection Program. Windows overlooked calm waters that reflected the autumn trees in brilliant shades of red and gold. To casual observers, they might have seemed like any family enjoying a peaceful retreat from city life. But the unmarked patrol car that drove by at regular intervals told a different story, as did the secure phones, the check-in protocols, and the new names they were learning to answer to. For now, they were the Sullivan family, David, Emily, and little Connor Sullivan, new arrivals from out of state, and with them, their loyal German shepherd, Shadow, a name chosen to honor what Max had been through while protecting his true identity. The morning sun streamed through the kitchen windows as Olivia, now Emily, prepared breakfast. Daniel, David, sat at the table reviewing security procedures with Officer Rivera, who visited twice weekly, and on the wide porch that wrapped around the cabin, Ethan, Connor, sat cross-legged beside Max, who lay stretched out in a patch of sunlight. The transformation in the German Shepherd over these 3 weeks had been nothing short of miraculous. Though still thin, his coat had begun to regain its luster. The wounds from his years of abuse were healing, leaving scars that would fade but never disappear completely. Dr. Patel, who drove out weekly to check on his progress, had pronounced his recovery remarkable by any medical standard. But the most profound change was in his eyes. Once dull with pain and fear, they now shone with alertness and something that could only be described as contentment. When he looked at Ethan, there was an unmistakable recognition, a depth of understanding that went beyond ordinary animal intelligence. From her place at the kitchen window, Olivia watched her son and the dog. Ethan's lips moved in quiet conversation, though no one else was present. After a moment, Max's tail thumped against the wooden porch, and he lifted his head to lick the boy's cheek, a gesture that had become their familiar ritual. "Still talking to him, huh?" Daniel observed, coming to stand beside her at the window. Olivia nodded. "All the time, and I'm starting to think—" She hesitated, still uncomfortable voicing what her heart had come to accept. "I'm starting to think he really can hear what Max is saying." Daniel was quiet for a moment, watching their son laugh at something only he could hear. "You know, 3 weeks ago, I would have said that was impossible, but after everything we've seen—" He shook his head in wonder. The details about the compound that turned out to be exactly right, the way Max responds to him, the way they found each other in the first place. Not to mention the fact that Max literally came back from the brink of death because Ethan asked him to, Olivia added softly. Officer Rivera joined them at the window, her expression thoughtful. "The forensic evidence we recovered from Kozlov's lab supports the possibility," she said. "The research, while highly unethical, was methodical. There were successful trials documented with other dogs and certain human subjects, particularly children under the age of 10. "What about Kozlov's daughter?" Daniel asked. Did you find anything more about what happened to her? Rivera's face darkened. We found records indicating she was terminated after attempting to release several test subjects. The documents were clinical, detached, as if she were just another failed experiment. His own daughter, Olivia whispered, horrified anew. What kind of monster? The kind we're determined to find, Rivera assured them. Every law enforcement agency in the country is looking for him. He won't be able to hide forever. On the porch, Ethan had taken out a small notebook, the journal Dr. Landry had suggested he keep. The child psychologist, specially cleared for their situation, had been visiting twice a week to help Ethan process his experiences. It seems to help him organize his thoughts, Dr. Landry had explained during her last visit, and if his connection with Max is as real as it appears to be, documenting it could be invaluable, both for Ethan's emotional processing and potentially for understanding this phenomenon. Now Ethan wrote carefully in the journal, occasionally looking up at Max as if confirming something. The dog watched him with patient attention, his head tilted slightly in what almost looked like curiosity. I've never seen anything like their relationship, Rivera commented, in all my years on the force. It goes beyond a boy and his dog, Olivia agreed. It's as if they understand each other completely. She paused, then added more hesitantly, Last night, I heard Ethan asking Max about his life before, about the fighting rings, and then Ethan was crying. When I went to check on him, he said Max was showing him memories of the other dogs who didn't make it out. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. Do you think that's healthy, him experiencing all that suffering? Dr. Landry says it might actually be healing for both of them, Olivia replied. Ethan is the first one who's truly understood what Max went through, and Max helps Ethan feel like his difference, his sensitivity, is a gift rather than something strange or wrong. Their conversation was interrupted by a sharp bark from the porch. All three adults turned to see Max on his feet, stance rigid, ears forward, staring intently toward the tree line that bordered the property. Ethan was immediately alert, setting down his journal and moving to stand beside the German Shepherd. Max says someone's watching us, he called to his parents, his voice tight with sudden fear. Rivera's hand went instantly to her holster. Stay inside, she ordered, moving quickly to the front door. Lock it behind me. Daniel pulled Olivia away from the window, already reaching for the secure phone to alert the protection detail. Ethan, get in here now. But Ethan hesitated, one hand buried in Max's ruff. The German Shepherd hadn't moved, his attention fixed on something none of them could see. His growl was low and continuous, not the frantic barking of an ordinary guard dog, but the calculated warning of a predator assessing a threat. It's not Kozlov, Ethan said suddenly, his head tilted as if listening. Max says it's someone else, someone who smells like medicine and dogs. Rivera paused at the door, frowning. Medicine and dogs? Before anyone could respond, a figure emerged from the trees, a woman, slender and cautious, her hands held open at her sides to show she carried no weapons. She moved with a slight limp, and even from a distance, the scar that ran down the side of her face was visible. Federal agent, Rivera called out, her weapon drawn but pointed downward. This is a protected site. Identify yourself. The woman stopped, still keeping her hands visible. My name is Sofia Kozlov, she called back, her voice carrying a faint accent. Victor Kozlov is my father, and I've come about the dog. A collective shock passed through the adults. Kozlov's daughter, the one his research had claimed was terminated after an escape attempt. Max's growl had stopped. He stood perfectly still, head high, studying the distant figure with an intensity that was almost human. She's telling the truth, Ethan said quietly, his eyes slightly unfocused in the way that had become familiar when he communicated with Max. Max knows her. She tried to help him escape before. She gave him water when the others didn't. Rivera kept her weapon ready, but lowered it further. Approach slowly, she instructed the woman. Any sudden movements, and I will consider it a threat. As Sofia Kozlov limped toward the cabin, more details became visible. The surgical precision of the scar that ran from temple to jaw, the slight stiffness in her movements suggesting old injuries, the wary intelligence in her eyes. She looked to be in her early 30s, though the hardness in her face spoke of experiences that had aged her beyond her years. Max watched her approach, his posture alert but no longer aggressive. When she was about 20 feet from the porch, he suddenly moved forward, placing himself between her and Ethan, not threatening, but protective. 873, Sophia said softly, stopping where she was. Her eyes moved from the dog to the boy behind him. And you must be the one he found, the one who can hear him. Ethan nodded, his small hand resting on Max's back. His name is Max now, he corrected her. He's not a number anymore. A sad smile touched Sophia's lips. Max, it suits him. She turned her attention to Rivera. I'm not here to cause trouble. I've been tracking my father's operations for years, working to shut them down. When I heard about the raid on his primary facility, I knew I had to find whoever helped make it happen. Why should we believe you? Daniel demanded, who had joined Rivera at the door while keeping Olivia safely inside. You're his daughter. Yes, I am, she acknowledged grimly, and his first test subject, the first child he tried to connect to his enhanced dogs. She gestured to the scar on her face. When I realized what he was doing and tried to free the animals, this was his response, his own daughter, but to him, I was just another failed experiment. Max made a soft sound in his throat, not quite a whine, not quite a growl. Ethan looked down at him, then back up at Sophia. Max says you smell like his sister, the boy said. Dog 29, you helped her too. Shock registered on Sophia's face. Yes, she whispered, I did. She was the gentlest of the experimental subjects, a small black and tan female. I couldn't save her, but I tried. Her voice broke slightly. You can really hear him, can't you? The way I used to hear them before. Ethan nodded solemnly. Before your father hurt your head and made the voices stop. Rivera glanced between them, her expression cautious but softening. Ms. Kozlov, we're going to need to verify your identity and your story. If you're really working against your father... I have proof, Sophia interrupted. Files, recordings, accounts of his operations across 3 countries. Enough to put him away for the rest of his life. Her gaze hardened. All I ask in return is the chance to help bring him down, and to make sure this boy and this dog remain safe from him. Over the next hour, as Rivera made calls to her superiors and Sophia's documentation was preliminarily verified, the strange connection between Kozlov's daughter and the Matthews family became clearer. She had indeed been working against her father for years, using her inside knowledge to disrupt his operations while gathering evidence of his crimes. He thinks I'm dead, she explained as they sat at the kitchen table, Max lying alertly at Ethan's feet. The attack was meant to kill me, and it nearly did. But it also destroyed the neural implant he'd placed in my brain to enhance my connection with the dogs. Neural implant? Daniel repeated, horrified. Sophia nodded grimly. My father's early experiments were crude. When he discovered I had a natural ability to sense the dog's emotions, he sought to amplify it through technology. Later, he moved to more sophisticated methods. Selective breeding of dogs with higher cognitive functions, chemical enhancement, targeted training. She glanced down at Max. 8, Max, was one of his most successful subjects. A dog with not just enhanced empathy, but the capacity for complex thought transmission. But Ethan doesn't have any implants, Olivia pointed out, her hand protectively on her son's shoulder, and yet he can hear Max clearly. Some children have a natural predisposition, Sophia explained. My father's research identified certain neurological patterns that facilitate cross-species communication. Children with these patterns can form connections without technological intervention. Connections far more nuanced than anything my father could artificially create. Ethan, who had been listening quietly, looked up at Sophia. Max wants to know if the other dogs got away, the ones from the bad place. Sophia's expression softened. Yes, they did. Almost all of them have been rescued. Some were too damaged to save, but many are being rehabilitated. She hesitated, then added gently, including a small black and tan female, Dog 29, Max's sister. The German shepherd's head lifted sharply, his dark eyes fixing on Sophia's face with sudden intensity. She survived, Sophia confirmed, as if answering an unspoken question. She's at a special rehabilitation facility where I volunteer. She's not well yet, but she's safe. Ethan's face lit up. Max wants to see her. He says she's the only family he had before us. Olivia and Daniel exchanged looks, concerned, uncertain, but unable to deny the hope in their son's eyes. That's actually part of why I came, Sophia said carefully. The facility where we're housing the recovered dogs specializes in rehabilitating animals from trauma and abuse. They have never dealt with dogs like these. dogs with enhanced cognitive abilities. They need someone who understands them, who can communicate with them. Her gaze rested meaningfully on Ethan. Our son is not getting involved in this any further, Daniel said firmly. He's been through enough already. Dad, Ethan protested, I want to help. Max's sister needs him, and the other special dogs need someone who can hear them. It wouldn't be dangerous, Sophia assured them quickly. The facility is secure, under federal protection, and your family would remain in protective custody during any visits. She leaned forward, her eyes earnest. These animals have suffered unimaginable cruelty. Many of them have given up, unable to trust humans again. But a child who can truly understand them, who can hear their thoughts and fears. She gestured to Max, who had relaxed visibly during their conversation. Look what your son has done for Max in just 3 weeks. He's healing in ways that should be impossible. Olivia studied the woman across from them, this scarred survivor who had risked everything to fight against her own father's cruelty. You can't hear the dogs anymore? Since your injury? Sophia shook her head sadly. Only faint impressions? Emotions sometimes, but not thoughts, not like before. She looked at Ethan with a mixture of wonder and regret. Not like him. As the adults continued to discuss possibilities and precautions, Ethan slipped from his chair to kneel beside Max. Their foreheads touched in what had become a familiar gesture of communion, the boy and dog perfectly still in their shared understanding. After a moment, Ethan looked up at his parents. Max says we need to help, not just his sister, but all of them, because he found me for a reason. Rivera, who had been quietly monitoring the conversation while awaiting final confirmation of Sophia's identity, spoke up. For what it's worth, the rehabilitation facility she's describing is legitimate. State-of-the-art security, top veterinary care. If your son were to visit, supervised of course, it could make a significant difference for these animals. She glanced at Max. And it might help us better understand this connection they share. Daniel sighed, looking at Olivia. In her eyes, he saw the same conflict he felt, the desire to protect their son from further involvement versus the undeniable bond that had formed between Ethan and Max. We'd need guarantees, Olivia said finally, absolute assurance of Ethan's safety, and it would be short visits only, at least at first. Ethan's face brightened, and Max's tail thumped against the floor. We can arrange that, Sophia agreed readily. And perhaps, with time, we could learn more about this ability, not to exploit it as my father did, but to understand it, to help both the children who have it and the animals they connect with. As plans began to take shape, Ethan returned to the porch with Max, retrieving his journal to record this new development. Through the window, Olivia watched them sitting together in the warm autumn sunlight, a boy whose extraordinary gift had found its purpose, and a dog whose suffering had led him to the one human who could truly understand him. Their story had begun in darkness and fear, a trapped animal, a sensitive child, a family in danger. But now it was evolving into something else entirely, a journey of healing, understanding, and possibilities none of them could have imagined. That evening, as sunset painted the lake in shades of amber and gold, the family gathered on the porch for dinner. The conversation flowed easily between serious discussions of security arrangements and lighter moments of normalcy that felt increasingly precious. Max lay nearby, his head on his paws, watching the family with contented eyes. Occasionally, his gaze would drift to the trees beyond the property, alert but no longer fearful. He's still out there, isn't he? Ethan asked suddenly, his fork pausing halfway to his mouth. Kozlov. Max can feel it. Daniel and Olivia exchanged concerned glances. Not close, Ethan clarified, as if responding to their unspoken worry. But not gone either. Max says he won't give up easily. Not on his special dogs, not on me. There was no fear in the boy's voice, only a calm certainty that would have been unsettling from a child so young, if not for the extraordinary circumstances that had shaped him over these past weeks. We won't let him get near you, Daniel promised. Either of you. Ethan nodded, returning to his dinner. I know. But Max says we need to be ready anyway, for when he comes. Later, as Olivia tucked her son into bed, she found herself studying his face in the soft glow of the nightlight. The same sweet features she had always loved, now marked by an awareness beyond his years. Are you afraid, sweetie? She asked softly. About Kozlov? Ethan considered this, his blue eyes thoughtful. Not really, he decided. Not with Max here. And not with you and Daddy and Officer Rivera and Ms. Sophia watching out for us. He snuggled deeper under his covers. Besides, Max says being afraid doesn't help. Being ready does. Olivia smoothed his hair back from his forehead. When did you get so wise? A small smile curved his lips. Max says I always was. I just needed him to help me find it. From his place on the rug beside Ethan's bed, Max lifted his head, those intelligent eyes meeting Olivia's. In that moment, she could almost believe she felt it too, a gentle brush against her consciousness, like a reassurance that went beyond words. "Good night, my brave boy," she whispered, kissing Ethan's forehead. "Sweet dreams." "Night, Mommy," he murmured sleepily. Max says good night, too. As Olivia closed the door, leaving it open just a crack the way Ethan preferred, she heard her son's voice drift into the hallway. Soft, sleepy words meant for canine ears alone. "Don't worry, Max. When he comes, we'll be ready. Together." In the quiet that followed, a low rumbling sound emerged, not quite a growl, not quite a purr. The sound of a promise between two beings connected by something science could barely begin to comprehend. Outside, the first stars appeared above the lake, reflecting in its still waters. A night bird called from the forest edge, and somewhere in the vast darkness beyond their protected haven, a man with cold ambition and colder methods plotted his next move, unaware that what he had created through cruelty and control had transformed into something far more powerful through compassion and love. The bond between a boy and a dog, a bond that would change everything. In Ethan's room, Max settled his head on his paws, dark eyes fixed on the door as they would remain throughout the night. Vigilant, protective, devoted. And in his dreams, Ethan walked beside him through sunlit meadows, boy and dog, two minds intertwined, their shared path stretching endlessly before them. Whatever came next, they would face it together. This was not an ending. It was just the beginning. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more incredible true stories to light. Although the events of this story were dramatized, they're inspired by the extraordinary bond that can exist between humans and animals, a bond that sometimes seems to transcend ordinary understanding. And remember, every day, countless animals still need rescue from situations of abuse and neglect. Consider supporting your local animal shelter or rescue organization, because sometimes the animal you save might just save you in return.